and this is your first book, right?
Yeah.
And it's called The Magpie Inn, Bed and Dinner. So we're going to start with the reading, okay?
Yeah. So this is chapter 1, The Questionable Detective. As Henry Oliver pulled up to the dank inn's cobblestone road, he pondered whether he should really go in. He spent several minutes watching his hand dart back and forth from the car door handle before finally deciding he should take control of his hand and make it push the car door open. Because that's what hands are supposed to do, listen. Yes, he thought, his hand should listen to him. Henry Oliver was a 37-year-old detective and liked to think he was a good one. He wore slightly oversized suits, which were very boring, but he couldn't possibly wear anything else because slightly oversized suits are what professional detectives wear. Or at least that's what he thought. Henry Oliver had a limp in his right leg, a horrible smoking addiction, and never seemed able to rid himself of stubble. Henry Oliver, the detective, was here for a well-deserved break after solving his largest case in Cornwall, Britain, so far. The case of the suicidal cat. It was very exciting, of course, full of all sorts of twists and turns, suspense and danger. But you don't get to hear about that. No. Instead, you get to hear about Henry Oliver's relaxing one-week vacation at Magpie Inn, Bed and Dinner. Finally, Henry Oliver shinnied up to the warped-looking door of the inn, holding out a shaky hand to open it. Blasted hand, Henry mumbled angrily as the hand disobeyed him. It was quite odd for a hand, especially a hand that didn't have alien syndrome, but it didn't matter if the hand listened or not, because the door swung open on its own. Henry Oliver found this quite suspicious, but caught himself. He wasn't supposed to find anything suspicious on this vacation. He was supposed to relax, unwind, and be horribly grumpy if anyone interrupted him. Henry Oliver adjusted the brown hat that hid his gray hair, looking up to see a woman at the front desk. At least, he thought it was a woman. Yes, she had beautiful, long legs with red heels. They were very long legs, and that was a good thing, too, because it took Henry a good few seconds to reach her face. Or rather, what was there instead. "Good evening, sir," she greeted him with a bit of difficulty through her fishy lips. It seemed everything about this lady, from the torso up, was very fishy. No, Henry thought, not suspiciously fishy. And he was right. This lady was not suspiciously fishy in any way, shape, or form, other than the fact that instead of a normal face, she had a fish head. It was a very fortunate coincidence that she happened to possess very beautiful legs, because Henry doubted anybody would have believed she was even a quarter-par woman without them. Henry believed in the facts, and rightly, because if he didn't, he wouldn't be a very good detective, now would he? And so, you must forgive him if he at first rejected the possibility of a half-fish woman standing in front of him at his vacation inn. Henry took a moment, opened his mouth to speak, took another moment, turned around, and left. A few moments later, Henry opened the door again, walked back to where he had been before, and spoke in his gruff tone. "Hello, how do you do?" Henry tipped his hat, taking care not to tip it so much that any of his gray hair would show. Henry was very aware he had gray hair, and very aware he did not like that he was aware he had gray hair, because maybe if he wasn't so aware he had it, he wouldn't be so mad that he had it. "Very well, sir." The fishwoman's lips did something that Henry could only possibly think was a purse, but she was actually trying very hard to smile. "And you?" she inquired, though it was hard to make out what she was saying due to all the blubber that packed her cheeks. Henry waited before realizing it was a question. "Very well, thank you," he nodded. "You have a very nice costume," Henry commented. Of course, the fishwoman's face was not a costume whatsoever, but Henry Oliver, the detective, refused to believe that any living being could possibly function with a fish face, so he decided it was a costume. The fishwoman's pin-needle eyes widened ever so slightly, and her beautiful long legs began to tremble. "Costume?" her fishy lips gaped. "I say, costume?" The little fins on the sides of her blue torso began to wiggle in a rather ugly way, as if a baby bird was attempting to move for the first time, with its pink, fleshy body writhing all around. Yes, the fishwoman's face and torso were very unpleasant to look at, and Henry was looking right at them. "Why, yes, your costume," Henry's lips curled to a frown, though he always looked like he was frowning anyway. But this was normal for a detective, because wouldn't you be frowning too if you'd seen all those horrible murders? Though I do find it odd for hotel staff to be wearing costumes. Are you sure this is allowed? The fishwoman had continued her writhing like a baby bird, but now calmed herself a bit. "Sir, this is the Magpie Inn, not a hotel," she gurgled, her beautiful long legs aiding her in standing up. "This is not a costume, and this is not a hotel, and I am Bloodrain, the receptionist." Bloodrain the fishwoman was one of the best employees Magpie Inn had ever had. Aside from accidentally eating all the seafood once, she had a clean record. Henry Oliver, being the detective he was, still refused to believe that what he was seeing wasn't a costume. Maybe it was because he would be afraid if he believed it wasn't a costume, since he himself thought he learned everything and anything about the real world, and people with half-fish bodies from the torso up were never included in that research. But of course, Henry would have to come around sooner or later. For now, however, he stayed in half denial. "I apologize greatly, madam." Henry tipped his hat, again very careful of his gray hair. "I am Henry Oliver, the detective. I believe I have a room booked here. You see, I am on vacation from detectiving." That was a word Henry had made up. He thought it sounded much better than investigating. "And have no intentions of solving any cases while I'm here. This, dear readers, is what we call dramatic irony." Bloodrain the fishwoman sat back down, now much, much calmer. "Well, that's very nice. Now let me see." She had a bit of trouble rummaging through the papers on her desk, as any fish lady with tiny, pathetic fins would have. "Oh, yes, Mr. Henry Oliver, the detective. Your room number is 408. Bloodrain the fishwoman then attempted to pick up Henry Oliver's room key, and had great difficulty doing so, until she eventually settled on using her plump, slimy fish lips to scoop up the rusty key-ring. Her long and nimble legs pranced over to Henry, bending down to make way for the fishy head that held the fishy lips that held the room key. Henry was, to say the least, slightly disgusted by this. He did not want to pick up his room key from the slimy lips of a half-fish woman who, only a few minutes ago, had lost her temper with him. But he did, for he was more shocked about the fact that this tiny little inn had 4 floors than the fact that he had just touched the slimy, wet bottom lip of a fishwoman. "Room 408, Henry repeated, wiping the saliva on his jacket. This was because Henry Oliver didn't carry a handkerchief in his pocket like any other detective, simply because he didn't want to be like any other detective. But the thought that maybe the reason any other detective might carry a handkerchief was so that they had something other than their suit with which to wipe off fishy lip saliva did not occur to Henry Oliver. And here we question whether Henry really is that great a detective. Yes, 408, you'll have to take the stairway, seeing as the elevator is currently in another dimension. One of our guests sneezed in it, you see. We're trying to get him and the elevator back to us. It's a dreadful business. Ah, yes, well, another fault of Bloodrain the fishwoman was that she blabbered on about things for far too long. At the moment, Henry Oliver's brain could not process any more of this otherworldly jabbergoff. That was another word Henry had made up. Oh, right. Well, here's your menu. The fishwoman used her plump, fishy lips once more to hand Henry Oliver a menu from which to order. A menu? Why would I need a menu? Bloodrain looked at Henry with her bulbous eyes for a moment before blubbering. For ordering your food. This is a B&D after all, sir. Henry then remembered the sign outside, and since Bloodrain had her fishy speech impediment, he made his own assumptions as to what she had said and took the menu. Henry looked over it for a few moments and, being the good detective he was, deduced. "Madam, this menu is for dinner, not breakfast," he frowned, furrowing his brows. Bloodrain the fishwoman scoffed. "Well, of course it is. Didn't you read the sign? Bed and dinner. Are you sure you're a detective, sir?" Henry was very offended by this statement, and rightly so, but of course he wasn't exactly the best of detectives anyway. However, Henry Oliver the detective was in denial of this, and had decided from the ripe age of 30 that he wouldn't listen to anyone who said he was bad at his job, even though a detective's job usually is to listen. "Yes, I'm sure. This is a very odd place, you know. Fish people, dinner instead of breakfast. I don't like it very much." But Henry merely thought the last bit. "Well, that's your menu. Please make your way to your room, sir. You can order there," Bloodrain blabbed, returning to her typewriter to clack on the keys with her weak fins. She didn't actually have anything to type, but Bloodrain the fishwoman thought it made her look very smart when she began typing on her writer. Henry shimmied past the fishy lady, but not fishy in a suspicious way, he reminded himself, making his way down the worn hallway and toward the steps. Henry climbed and climbed, surprised every time he saw the occasional serpent man, mermaid in a tank, satanic twins, and the like. No, he thought, must be seeing things. We will all have to forgive Henry Oliver the detective for being so thick-headed. It cannot be denied that he'd come around to the fact these were real people soon. Very soon, in fact, because soon after, as he'd entered his room, sat down in a very uncomfortable chair, in which the arms were placed to almost purposefully feel awkward, lit a cigarette and begun looking over the questionably stained menu. A shrill scream of bloody murder sounded, almost shaking the entire inn.
Oh my gosh! Do you want us to, can you tell us some about how you got started with the story?
Sure. I've always loved mystery genre stories and fantasy genre stories too, so kind of made sense to just combine them. And I've always loved writing too. I wrote a lot of short stories and lots of morbid things. So I started writing this. I had no idea it would be a book or anything, but I really liked the idea, so it kind of just came to fruition in that way. And yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Let's see. Who else are you reading right now?
What else am I reading?
Or what were you thinking about when you started writing
I
this?
started writing this. Agatha Christie, definitely. And, I love Sherlock Holmes. I love that series, so definitely that kind of style was definitely super inspiring.
What is it about mysteries that gets you excited about writing?
I just really like, there's little things that you don't really notice while you're reading it, but later on it's like, why didn't I notice that? And it all kind of comes together very subtly until the very last moment. And then someone explains it all to you.
Did you always think that you were going to have sort of fantastical characters in it, or was that something that happened later on?
I think I've always written very strange characters just because that's what I think is really fun about writing. And a lot of them I never planned to make. It's just kind of like, your hands do their own thing and then you look at it and then there it is.
Blood Rain.
Yeah, there it is officially. But I do love all the characters in the book, so.
Yeah, can you give us any clues about what might happen later on in the story?
Blood Rain really likes sandwiches.
Oh.
And there's a murder.
Oh.
That's definitely a big part of the book.
Does anybody else have any questions for Lena right now? Jean.
So I just was curious about kind of either what feeds the humor in your book or where your sense of humor comes from. Because when I think about fantasy or mystery, they're not two genres I generally think are humorous, although they could be.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering why you decided to put that in this particular book.
The humor?
Yeah.
Well, I think I probably get my sense of humor from both my mom and my dad. And, also from myself, of course. And I think it just kind of, I don't recognize how funny it is until I didn't recognize the first draft. I didn't realize how funny it was until I showed it to my mom, and she was just laughing and laughing every 5 seconds, and I was like, I didn't know that was so funny. Like, okay. So it's kind of blind humor, I guess, is the way to word it. So.
It's your natural strength.
Yeah.
So are the long legs.
Oh yeah.
Anybody else right now? Okay, well, thank you so much. We're so honored that you came here to read with us.